Hey, how's it going, everybody? I got to move this thing around a little bit there. That's better. I hope it will have some people piling in. I didn't do a whole lot of advertising on this one, but I figured, you know what, the nature of the topic should generate some interest. Let me see if I can maneuver this a little bit better. No, that's worse. Well, that'll have to do. Oh man. So yeah, horrible news pretty much all over. Um, we had the shooting in Texas, and obviously that's going to occupy most of our time tonight. But not long ago, we had the shooting in Buffalo. It seems like these things come in spurts. Like we end up with a number of shootings, and then it kind of goes away for a while, and then all of a sudden you'll get another round of shootings, and then it'll stop. Of course, when I was a kid, we didn't have this. I mean, a school shooting was unheard of. I mean, really. So, yeah, I mean, it was. Let me see if I can. There we go. That's better. It's relatively new to me. I can't believe that this is happening, but then again, I sort of can. And so tonight, I thought I would go ahead and talk a bit about what I think is the problem and potentially some solutions. I don't know. We'll just have to wait and see. Um, so first of all, let's talk a little bit about, you know, the AR-15 obviously is going to be the center of attention here. And I've said it before, the AR-15 is not the ideal weapon for using in these instances because it's obvious you're carrying one. So you're not going to be able to penetrate very deeply. People are going to spot you right away. I would be more concerned about a person packing some 9 millimeters because that person could get deeper into the school before he starts opening fire. But I also don't want to get accused of giving these shooters ideas, right? So I have to be kind of careful about that. But whatever the case, if you ban the AR-15, that's not going to stop the school shootings. They will resort to other means, and the 9 millimeter, which are readily available. I mean, kids can get their hands on those pretty easily. And of course, being in possession of a handgun is a federal offense, but these kids don't care. I mean, they're not worried about, any laws that they break. So forget it. I mean, passing all the laws in the world is not going to stop this. What about making it harder for these kids to get a hold of these rifles? Well, we already have the laws in place, but unfortunately, we're not very good at, let's say, enforcing them and making them stick. It's just really difficult to stop a kid who really wants to do something like this and has no background. I mean, it's one thing if he has a lot of felonies, might be able to stop him early then, but if he hasn't had any priors and he's 18, he's an adult. And, the whole idea somehow that, well, he's 18, he shouldn't be allowed to do this, he shouldn't be allowed to do that. Well, I mean, is 18 years old, if let's try that again, is an 18-year-old an adult or not? I mean, you can't have it both ways. Is he old enough to be responsible and know better or not? And if he's not old enough to know better and he's not enough to be able to understand the implications of things, then why are we having him vote? So, I could see, you pretty well can box yourself into a corner relatively easily with this argument that 18-year-olds shouldn't be allowed to purchase rifles or guns in general because they can't purchase handguns. Well, an 18-year-old can purchase a handgun, but a 17-year-old couldn't. And of course, they're wanting to make it to where it's illegal for even an 18-year-old to buy a handgun. Well, again, an 18-year-old can do a lot of things because we think that they are mature adults. And we certainly, when they commit crimes, we have no trouble whatsoever, trying them as adults and sentencing them as adults. So when they commit crimes, we certainly are willing to say at that point that They were responsible enough to know better. They were mature enough to know better, and they have to face the consequences for their crimes just like any other adult. But then when it comes to handgun purchases, all of a sudden they become little children. And I see a real inconsistency there. If there's anybody listening, is my audio coming through okay? Is my microphone coming in all right? I don't know. I have a couple of people online here so far. Again, I didn't really advertise this thing, but hopefully, if you can, go into the comment section and let me know if I'm coming through okay. Okay, so I don't know how many people are going to join. I don't know how long it's going to take them to get on here. So let me go ahead and talk a little bit about the problems that we're having. And you got to go back to understanding what has changed. Oh, good deal. What has changed between when I was a kid and now? And not the guns. We always had guns. I mean, the big difference between now and then was that each person didn't have as many. So a gun collector was almost unheard of back in the 1970s and 1980s. Unheard of is a little strong, but there weren't very many. Um, Most people who owned guns had one or two, and they might have a few rifles in there as well. So if you lived out on a ranch, you might have a half a dozen guns, but you wouldn't have an arsenal. And you certainly wouldn't have an arsenal back then if you lived in the city or the suburbs. What's changed a lot on gun ownership is not the average gun owner per capita. That's about the same as it used to be. So in other words, about the same percentage of people own at least one gun now than in comparison to back then. What's different is the rise of the gun hobbyist, the person who owns a huge number of guns. And I'm one of those, right? I mean, it's people like me that support gun manufacturers and the NRA and Gun Owners of America for the most part, because a very large percentage of firearms sold in this country are going to people like me who are collectors. And I'm not a collector as in I try to see how many guns I can own, or I have to own 18 AR-15s. I own two. But I just like them, and I will go out on a lark and I'll go out and buy one or two if something catches my fancy. And over the years, I've developed quite a few guns. And how many do I have? I don't even know. I've got that many. And I can guarantee you, though, none of those guns have hurt anybody. Not a single one of the weapons I've owned has ever shot anybody. And I hope that they never do. I mean, that's, only a few are actually purchased for self-protection. I have one that I carry in a drawer, for example. It's in the other room, but I do have a handgun that I carry usually around in the house wherever I'm working. And, in that case, if somebody breaks in, I've got a handgun right there. It's a revolver, Smith & Wesson, no big deal. It is a revolver, so I like it because it's easy to clean. And, and also most importantly, when you have somebody invading, it's much, much more, let's say, reliable. When you pull the trigger on the revolver, it's going to fire. With the semi-auto, you have to be careful. And while it will work 90% of the time, there's still that 10% that I don't like. So I use revolvers primarily, around the house at night. You hear a strange noise outside your door. You've got the gun with you, ready to go. I do have a couple of AR-15s, but I hope I don't have to pull those out. If I have to pull out an AR-15, that means I'm under attack. But that's okay, because if I'm under attack, I've got the machinery to deal with it. But of my arsenal, I only have maybe just a small handful that I would say are used for self-protection. The rest of them I just purchased because I like them. I take them out to the range I don't go out much anymore. I used to go out quite a bit, but I would go out and shoot them, and I just like having them. I mean, I have an old car. I like having it. I'm a hobbyist. I collect things, and I admire really good workmanship when it comes to guns, and so I purchase them. And I see no problem with that because A, you're not going to be able to steal them. And B, they're not going to hurt anybody. I mean, they don't go off by themselves. They're not going to walk down to a local school and start shooting people. Um, so the big difference between now and back then was the rise of the gun collector. And that's the reason why we have 300 million guns in this country. It's primarily the gun enthusiasts that have purchased such huge quantities of these weapons, but I don't see any problem with that. They are probably the most law-abiding citizens on the planet, and I mean that. I mean, if you look at the average gun collector, and I'm talking about a hobbyist, a collector, not a drug lord. Okay, I'm talking about a person who purchases these guns because they like the guns and they just like to have them and they're interested in them. They are probably, I would bet, willing to bet that their criminal record is by and large spotless, and mine is. Never been arrested. I have never been arrested. When I was a kid, I almost got arrested a couple of times over stupid little things, mostly involving my car. But I mean, I was not a bad kid at all, and I would never think about hurting people. That's just not me. So these guns are in the hands of people who are very responsible. So that's not the problem. Okay. I'm drinking my go-to whiskey, Evan Williams. If you ever just need a good big jug of whiskey to have around, because you have people coming over and you don't want to spend a crap load of money on whiskey for people that are just coming over to talking, this stuff is really good. It's just really good whiskey and it's cheap. So I always have a big jug of it because I might have people coming over and I like to have something that they can drink. It is bourbon, and you want scotch. Well, there are other things. And I'm going off on a tangent here, but why not? We're still trying to wait on people to come in. But the best whiskey I have ever had is named Koval, Koval. It's made out of Chicago, and it is dreamy. Oh my God, it's good. I mean, it's not cheap. It's 750 milliliters. Well, let's say a half a milliliter is probably like $40. So you take normal whiskey and you double it, and you pretty much got your price for the Koval. But it is the smoothest whiskey I've ever had. And I'm not a real whiskey connoisseur, but I can tell good stuff from bad stuff. And the Koval, Koval, and you want the oat whiskey. Remember, oat whiskey by Koval. You're lucky if your local liquor store can order it because they don't ship to all states. And of course, that's because each state has its own laws about what you can import. This is a little fascism. Yeah. Okay. So getting back on track here. We had guns back when I was a kid. I got my first 30-30 when I was 9. I mean, a 30-30, it was a Henry replica, probably bought from Sears. I don't know where my dad got it, but he gave it to me, and I went out and shot it. It was a reasonably powerful weapon, but I lived down on a ranch and thought nothing of it. And in fact, and I've said this to many, my bedroom was where the gun rack was stored. I mean, that's where all the rifles of the family and guns were stored, in my bedroom. And there was no locks. There was no, combinations or nothing. I could have pulled any of those rifles off the rack anytime I wanted to and used them. And I never did. Just never did. Wouldn't even thought of it. My dad would have killed me, and I knew he would. So it wasn't like we didn't have guns. In middle school, well, high school, a lot of the kids came in pickups with gun racks, and they had rifles in the parking lot of the high school. I didn't, because I wasn't a pickup guy at that time. But a lot of the kids had gun racks. Not a really sensible thing to have in a pickup, by the way. A gun rack is just begging for thieves to steal your rifles. So the best thing to do is just slide the actual rifle behind the seat and drive around. You don't want it hanging in your back window, but whatever the case, it was, redneck chic, so, and keep in mind, you'd be in serious trouble today if you tried something like that, but it was common. But I did have a 22 revolver in my locker at the high school. I think it was only there for maybe a month. And, it was one of those deals where you kind of open your locker just enough for your friends to see it. So they go like, whoa, you got a gun? Oh yeah. Like, don't mess with me, that kind of thing. What would have happened to me if any of my friends had gone and told the principal? I would have been suspended, and they would have probably have confiscated my gun, but that would have been about the end of it. I would not have made the newspapers. I would not have been expelled. It would have been, you can't have this at school, so I'm suspending you for a week, and you're not getting your gun back. And that would, of course, I don't know if it would have pissed me off because it was probably just some really cheap revolver. And I didn't really care. I was just kind of trying to be a little bit cool, I guess, at the time, and it's for the same reason, some kids had switchblades, so in West Side Story wasn't that far back in the distance. So, the whole thing, the persona about the switchblade, and I think they were legal back in Oklahoma at that time. They're legal now here in this state. They're not legal everywhere. But, we carried weapons around because it was a little bit of a tough guy thing. But here's the difference, and this is where I'm trying to go with it. The idea of using those weapons, shooting somebody, it might have crossed our minds, but not seriously. Let me explain. And I know what you're thinking. What do you mean? You were going to shoot people? No. Some of you might remember a movie back in the day called Rock and Roll High School. Okay. And Rock and Roll High School it featured the Ramones. Great band. Some people say America's greatest band. It might be. They might be. They're all dead now, but that might be America's greatest band, right? And they had this song called Rock and Roll High School. Wasn't necessarily their best song, but it was a good one. And they had a great music video for it. Excuse me. But what was the theme of the movie was they blew up the high school at the end. I mean, they had the explosives and they blew up the high school. And of course, if you were watching the movie, you went, yeah, right on, pretty cool. You wanted that high school blown up. When I was a kid, I didn't like school, and we wanted to blow up the high school. Now, you think, oh my God, Johnny Walker Dredd is like some terrorist. No, because I never would have actually done it. We fantasized about doing these kind of things, and we talked about doing these kind of things all the time, but we never meant it. If somebody showed up with some dynamite, maybe with some butane tanks, and said, hey, well, I got the stuff, let's go do it, we would have turned around and said, hey, come on, dude, man, look, we were just joking around, right? And he would probably say, well, you guys talk tough, well, let's go do it, come on. And we would say, look, man, we were just talking. We're not going to go and blow up a high school, okay? So while we dreamed about it and fantasized about it, we all kind of knew that we wouldn't really do something like that. It's not uncommon for kids to want to think about killing the local bully. If I had a gun, I'd shoot him. There's a lot of this kind of fantasy that kids go through that, if you actually gave them a gun, they wouldn't do it. It's just something to dream about. Okay. And I am sorry if you're thinking that, oh my God, Johnny Walker Dread, him and his friends had thoughts of violence in their head. Yeah, we did have thoughts of violence in our head, but we weren't serious about it. And the reason why we wouldn't do it was one, I think this is the primary one, and this is where I'm getting at, is that we first of all understood the horrific thing that we would be doing, and also we could control our impulses. We would not do it because we would think twice about it. We would look and say, well, okay, yeah, I wanted to kill that kid, but man, I don't want to go up for murder, and it is killing a person. And so you wouldn't really do it. When I had the gun in my locker, I am sure, and I can't remember everything I was thinking back in the day. But I remember I probably at times thought about what I would do with this gun if somebody messed with me. Right? But I am sure that there were people that messed with me, but I didn't use the gun on them because, again, it's sort of just fantasy. And you understand that shooting somebody, that's pretty serious. You're going to go to jail for the rest of your life. We had enough forethought and enough impulse control to think about these things and realize, no way. I mean, this is insane. It's lunacy. So, yeah, thought crimes. Here's what I'm getting at. The difference today from the time when I was a kid is that kids today don't have impulse control. They don't. Okay, let me see here. Put this one up. Like Kyle of the CVS farm, he said he wished he had his. Absolutely. When I heard him saying that on audio, I said, I said shit like that when I was a kid. Man, and if I had my gun, I still say shit like that. If I was in that pickup, I would just run them over. Well, what happens when you're really in a pickup and those people in front of your pickup? You don't do it. Why? Because you think about the ramifications of what you're doing. And you just decide that, no, besides the fact that I could kill somebody, I could get, life in prison, and also all of the shame and all of the ill will that comes with that. I wouldn't. If I have protesters in front, and even if they're banging on my hood, I'm not going to run them over. Now, I will say this, though. You try to get into the truck, and at some point, if I feel like my life is in danger, I'm getting the hell out of there. And if you're in the way, I am sorry. I am not going to sacrifice my life for any of your feelings. But at the same time, I'm not going to act out on every crazy impulse that I have. So how do we know that today's kids are having troubles with this? Well, one way to think about it, if you want to look at the ultimate impulse control problem, it's suicide. And about 1990, suicide rates started increasing alarmingly in this country. Hello. Okay. And that is the ultimate, as I said before, impulse problem. Right? Well, okay, maybe not the ultimate, because shooting up a school is worse. But it's still, I would suggest it's like the most pure impulse control problem you can think of. A person is despondent, in despair, whatever feelings they're having, they're killing themselves. And that means, A, they're not thinking about the ramifications of what's going to happen here. And B, they cannot think ahead beyond just the day. And so let me show it. I'll see if I can show a. I suck at this. I'm going to try to show you a screen capture. Let me see here. Yeah, there we go. All right, let me see if I can pull this up. Okay, I need to put this on its own. Okay, that should help. Okay, give me 1 second, guys. Sorry. All right, getting close. All right, let's see here. Okay, so how are we doing? Can you see the little graph there? Just go ahead and punch into your window there if you can see that. Would it be impulse if they've been contemplating for months? No, I think that ultimately the impulse control comes up if they do it. Okay, so let's see here. So you can see here the issue. By the way, in 1975, right up in here, is when they implemented the suicide prevention week. And right after that, suicides jumped for about 10 years and then they lowered. And then, as you can see, suicide rates, this is per capita. So this is a rate. So it takes into account population increases. And you can see what's happening. So students, kids, I should say, are basically having more and more troubles shutting down, not acting on impulses. So let me go ahead and stop the sharing. Okay. And by the way, that was total suicides. If you filter for youth, for age, you get pretty much the same thing. So you see this just constant, almost linear increase in suicides per year, to the point where the number of suicides, the actual suicide rate, is above that we've ever had in this country, as far as back as we measured it. Which, so, and keep in mind, I mean, life isn't harder on kids today than it was back then. What's going on? Well, again, I think that kids today really struggle with trying to think ahead and stopping from carrying out acts that they want to perform right now in the immediacy. By the way, if you listen to the Buffalo shooter, who in here has actually watched the video that he took while he was shooting these people? I did, but I'm going to tell you what, man, that's not fun. I mean, that's pretty horrific. Anybody here that watched that as he walked through the supermarket and was just mowing people down? I would play it, but the original source file is gone. As soon as somebody posts it, they take it down because it's graphic. Yeah, they've scrubbed it. I saw the thing unscrubbed. Man, I'm telling you, where they didn't have any blurring or nothing. And he walks out of that car, and there's this white lady walking towards him. He just mowed her down. And he didn't even have to shoot her. He could have walked right by her, went into the grocery store. He popped her anyway. Let's see here. Okay, I'll talk about that. Okay, so I think that Regulov was probably thinking he was posting something that it would bother me, but Actually, I mean, I'll take issue with a little bit of it, but for the most part, I think you're onto something there. And we'll talk about that in more in the future here. And then we have, oh, let's see what he says. Actually, it wasn't okay. Maybe you saw more of it because what I saw was clearly there was more, but it had been stopped. But I remember him apologizing to one guy. Looked like he was a Hispanic male that was kind of crouching behind the counter, and and he didn't shoot him. He walked right by him. He could have. So it's kind of strange. But here's the point I'm making. If you watch the video, okay, he's driving and he's driving really fast. And he pulls into the parking lot and he starts to head towards the main entrance. Then he turns down into the parking lot and he starts to park it. And then he tells himself, got to do this, got to do this. So he whips the car around, pulls out, and starts shooting. In other words, his lack of impulse control was so bad that he knew that if he thought about this anymore, he would talk himself out of it. And so he had to tell himself, no, we're going to do it. We got to do it. We got to do it. That is exactly what I'm talking about. Where else do we see this? Okay, well, I think a large part of it, and this is where a lot of people are going to get mad at me, but you know what? Here's my theory on this. If you want to solve this problem, you're going to have to confront those ideas that repel you, because the solutions to this problem of the gun shootings are not easy ones. There is no solution that's going to make people feel good. It's not going to happen. And everybody wants one. Why can't we implement a new program where we put a lot of money in and we get together, kumbaya, and we learn to love each other? Hey, that sounds great. Not going to work. I'm not interested in things that don't work. I'm more interested in things that work, even if they don't sound good. And so I've been thinking hard about this. Where is another area where we're seeing the impulse control? Now, keep in mind, and this is really important, okay, one of the problems that we have in argument is we're always trying to find something the person says that we can use as a weapon against him to shut him down. And so I know how this is going to be used in the future here. So I'm going to tell you right now. Well, let me explain that here in a moment. So now I'm going to tell you, the trans movement is a perfect embodiment of a lack of impulse control. Back in the day, there were plenty of kids that were confused, who weren't as masculine as they would want to be, or as masculine as they felt they needed to be able to fit in, or as masculine as they thought God intended, whatever. This is not a new phenomenon. A lot of kids grew up thinking that life would be better if I was a girl. Life would be better if I was a boy. I feel like a girl. I feel like a boy, whatever. I mean, The Who has a song about it, right? But at that time, the idea somehow that you would inject a bunch of synthetic hormones into your body to change who you are was not something that I think kids back then would have done. They would looked upon that and said, hey, look, I mean, okay, yeah, it's not good, but I'll ride this out. Today, kids can't ride it out. They have to make a change now. And the idea somehow that they're changing their identity, they're turning themselves into a walking sideshow. I don't want to say freak show because that's not That's not what I'm trying to say, but a sideshow, meaning people are going to notice, people are going to talk, and they don't seem to care. They just want to make the change. They'll worry about the ramifications later. And so part of the suicide deal, I think, and only a small part of it, but I think a large part, I was about ready to say the opposite of what I just told you, but I think a part of the suicide rate is due to this kind of thing where kids are confused and they don't understand and they want a solution right now. I'll tell you another one, and this will really piss off a lot of people. Tattoos. Okay, right now you're ready to hit the keyboard. I got tattoos or whatever. First of all, hey, I don't give a shit if you have tattoos or not. You're not going to stop me from saying what I want to say. Your feelings are not my problem. So if I hurt your feelings, well, that's just too bad. So telling me about the tattoos you have and how you worked out okay, not going to have any effect on me at all. You're not going to kowtow me into changing my stance. But here's the thing. Back when I was a kid, we thought about it. Yeah, I'll get me a tattoo on the side, big boat anchor like Popeye or whatever. But we didn't do it. We didn't do it because it was talk, but it was like, I don't want to put that on my shoulder. My mom will be pissed. Hell, future jobs. And I don't want to go through life with that thing hanging on me. So while we thought it would have been a cool thing to do at the time, by and large, we didn't do it because we thought ahead a little bit. Nowadays, I want a tattoo that goes up my neck, and I gotta have it. And by the way, I'm going to go down tomorrow and I'm going to get it because if I think about this anymore, I won't do it, and I have to do it. That's what you're facing. I had my punk days. Okay, so I spent time at Madame Wong's, and I wasn't a punk rocker in the sense that I had bobby pins in my cheeks and stuff like that, or colored hair or whatever, mohawks. But if you look at those punks at that time, by and large, they didn't do anything to themselves that was really permanent. They stuck the bobby pins in, they got the mohawks, and, for the most part, they dressed, pretty wild. And I did a little bit of that myself. But by and large, these kids, 1980s and 70s, late 70s, they didn't go so far that they were going to have to explain 40 years later why they have a giant spider tattooed on their skull. Go look at the pictures. For the most part, the things that they did were not real permanent. And when you have punk rockers that have more self-control than the kids today, that's saying something. So let me go ahead and read a few of these comments here. He had to bully himself into committing the shooting. And I have a feeling that's really common. If you go back to Keybold, and I forget the other kid's name, this is that Colorado high school way, way back, 20, 30 years ago. Those two kids, I think they went as twos because they sort of propped each other up. And they sort of talked each other into going along with it. I have a feeling if they were by themselves, they might not have carried it out. Yeah, and by the way, there's no one solution or one right take because there is no commonality necessarily between all of them. But a lack of impulse control is pretty, I think, it's not universal, but I think it shows up a lot. I think it accounts for quite a few of these shootings, maybe the vast majority. All right, let's see what else we got here. All right, I'm not sure what point it was I was making, but Good deal. Oh yeah, the Texas shooter was not trans. I wasn't saying he was, and that's another thing that's important is that I used the trans as an example of a self-control, self-impulse deal. I am not saying that they're school shooters. Okay. In fact, I don't know any of them that have shot up schools. Um, my gut feeling is they probably come from very liberal households and they probably don't have a lot of guns around. Okay. Now I know that the gun control freaks will jump all over that, but that's because they only can think in shallow terms, but whatever the case. So let's see here. Yeah, tattoos on the face and neck and all that kind of stuff. Yeah. Now I do make one exception. I think in the military, a tattoo is almost part of the uniform. So, and in the military, you already have a job. You're kind of well set. I don't look upon tattoos quite the same way there. I think they absolutely look terrible on women. And frankly, to me, it's like I see a woman with a tattoo and it's like she's missing a tooth or something. Hey, I'm free to have my own opinions on that. And so I don't care if you're offended. If you're a female and you have tattoos, yeah, I probably won't like them. Tough shit. You know. Let's see what else. Yeah, okay. Let's see what we got here. Oh yeah, trans. Okay. So we have the impulse control problem and how let's talk a little bit more about what these school shooters are not. So part of what we're talking about here tonight is to kind of dispel the myths. Now, I don't have proof. One thing that we have troubles with is a lot of these school shooters die during the actual shooting. So it's hard to kind of discern what their motives were. And a lot of them after the shooting are just clamming up and they're not saying anything. I will say this, okay? School shooters, especially the younger ones, are not suicidal. But at the same time, they are. You're thinking, oh, come on. What kind of logic is that? Hang loose here. Just hang loose. When they're planning to do these acts, they're thinking that they're going to get shot dead. So they're, in a sense, they're not suicidal because they're not wanting to die. They accept dying as sort of the, Valhalla ending to the whole thing. It's the proper Viking funeral that they see themselves going out on. So they may be heading out in their mind on a suicidal mission, but they're not suicidal. They're not doing this to get killed, but they just don't care if they die. However, that's their plan. But once they start shooting, things change. And all of a sudden, here comes the police and they've got guns. And I think at that moment is when they feel very mortal. They had planned to die, but all of a sudden they don't want to because death is more imminent now. And let's also face it, bullets, when they go through your body, really hurt. So the idea that somehow they're going to die in a blaze of glory, like, Scarface, that evaporates once the magnitude of what they have just done hits them and what those people showing up on the scene are going to do to them. And I think that for that brief moment, they become very scared. And they may be wondering, well, why do you think that, Johnny Walker Dredd? Well, here's a reason. Number one, a lot of them, when they write their notes and stuff, you get the feeling that they were willing to die, but they were taken alive. But the other reason is, if you ever watch them in court, You don't get the smirks and the old, like, oh yeah, judge, so what? I shot up a school. What are you going to do to me? What you see are confused kids who, in my opinion, never thought they were going to be facing a judge when they planned it. And all of a sudden now they're looking at a life sentence, maybe an execution, and they are now terrified. Every time I've seen these little punks in front of a judge, they look confused, bewildered, and a little bit scared. So I don't think they went in with the idea of, living through this and needing a lawyer and fighting the charges. When they went in, they thought they were going to die in a hail of glory. But it's a lot different when the police do show up and they've got real guns. So I'm going to ask you a question, everybody out there. What do you think? Do you think that sounds like a rational explanation? Because it does matter. Okay, let's see here. Yeah, well, I think a lot of people didn't think it was funny. No blood? Oh, I see. You were trying to respond as to why they don't. Okay, I got it. So it matters. One thing is that it points to also in terms of motive, a lot of people think these kids are there because they want to have their name passed around. They want to have everybody talking to them. I don't think so. I don't think they're looking for celebrity status at all. And so this whole idea, well, we're not going to name the person because to name him would give him, the recognition he so craves. I don't think they crave recognition at all. So why do they do it? Well, their deal most comes from what I would call entitlement. Whatever it is, they think they're entitled to something and they're not getting it, and they're blaming the people around them. So this is their motive. The lack of impulse control is why they end up able to do it. So let's talk a little bit more about this motive. It shows up a lot especially in some like in Sandy Hook and the Colorado, the Columbine one, where these kids who are a little bit of an outcast think they deserve to be popular. Almost every one of these instances is a kid who thinks he was entitled to something, popularity, having people talking nice to him, girls, whatever. And society has convinced this person that the reason why they're not getting it is no fault of their own. Because if you go back to school when I was a kid, I wasn't a cool kid. I wasn't an uncool kid. Pretty normal. But there were the uncool kids, and some of them were bullied. A lot of them were bullied, and they realized they weren't popular, and they kind of knew why. They were dorky, and they were, they weren't really necessarily good with girls. But they kind of recognize it, and they just wish they were better. Today, I think kids think that they deserve to be popular. They deserve these things. And if they don't have them, it's because the people around them are denying them that. And Klebold from the Columbine was a perfect example of that, where they were outcasts. and they shot up the school because those students ostracized them as if they were entitled to these other students' social contract of some sort. So, and by the way that they acted and the way that they dressed basically is what made them ostracized in the first place. So they couldn't see that. They only could see was, I'm not popular, everybody hates me, and it's their fault, and one day I'm going to get even. Now, this doesn't match every one of them. Some of these people are shooting up schools out of racial hatred. No denying that. Okay. That's actually relatively rare, though. Everybody says, what do you mean rare? Hey, when these guys go and shoot up a school, they're, with the rare exception, and Buffalo is one of those, they're not looking for schools that have people, kids of color. They're shooting up their own schools, primarily white kids. It's not race. And, by and large, most of these shooters come from suburban backgrounds. Why is that? Because if you grow up poor and you grow up in rough, let's say, surroundings, you're less likely to adopt these sort of entitled attitudes. You've had it rough. You're used to that. And you're used to things not going your way. I don't think these kids are. And so when they get denied, they lash out. I think another motivation is school shootings are just the thing to do. I mean, I think a lot of kids shoot up a school because it's just on their mind. I'm pissed off. I want to lash out. I'm going to get even. And I have no self-control to stop me. What am I going to do? Hey, school shootings. That's what's been in the news lately. And so they act out in ways that that comes to mind because it's always in the news. And so and I wouldn't call it copycat. They're not doing it because the other people did it. They're doing it because the consciousness of what happened elsewhere surfaces really quickly. When I was a kid, it was serial killers. Those were the crimes of the day, and they were everywhere. And I think some of it was that when you have deep-rooted, often sexual, let's say, problems, and you've been hearing serial killer all the time. And half the movies of that era were about serial killers. It was seriously so over dramatized. I don't want to say over dramatized because it's a serious problem, obviously. But I think that a large part of the serial killing thing was based on the fact that it was just so commonly talked about that it surfaced in these people's minds real early. It was just something you did. And so when will the school shooting stop? In my opinion, the school shootings will stop once people quit talking about them so much, but that's asking too much of people. When somebody walks into a school and shoots up a bunch of kids, you can't expect society to stay mum about it. That's not fair. So I'm not saying what we should do is just not even speak about school shootings. No, I mean, what I'm saying is, one, quit dramatizing them. There's a new movie out, and it pisses me off because every time I want to watch my YouTube shows, it shows up as as an advertisement. It's about a school shooting. Boy, that was something you don't want right now. You don't want school shootings broadcast like that. People watching this stuff, it's just going to raise the awareness of this higher and higher and higher. That's going to cause more school shootings. So why do these kids shoot up the schools? It's primarily to demonstrate to the world, to the society, of what they've been robbed of and to inflict a little bit of pain back. So what are they looking for? They're not looking for name recognition. They're not looking for fame. They live to hear society squeal and cry over what they've done. That's what drives them. You see, now you know how it feels to have been robbed of your childhood because you couldn't make any friends. You see what it's like now to be lonely? So what ultimately what this means is um as we hear about these horrible things that happen, the more monuments we create, the more candles we light, the more crying we do, just exacerbates the problem. That's what they live for. You see what it feels like to be an outcast now? It's not so fun, is it now? That's what drives them, in my opinion. Can I prove this? No. The only thing I can do is make as convincing an argument as I can, and it's up to you to decide whether I'm on the right track or not. I don't think anybody can prove any of this stuff. A lot of psychologists are trying, but frankly, I think that they're not well equipped for this kind of thing. Let's see what we have here. The majority of shootings at or near schools are in inner cities. Oh, I didn't know that. Hmm. Okay, if that's true, then that kind of changes things a little bit, doesn't it? There is a social contagion element to this. They may have done studies, and the more media attention, the more copycats. I don't like to use the term copycats. I don't think they're doing it because somebody else did it. I think it's because it just raises a consciousness of this kind of um, lashing out. Oh, I see. Yeah, that's probably true. Of course, the shootings you're talking about probably involve one or two people. You know, there's been some more. There's school shootings, and yeah, you go into like inner city LA. Yeah, you bet they do have them. Often over drugs, and those are a little bit different though. And I will say the difference is primarily those shootings are directed at certain individuals. Oh, they'll end up shooting other people, but typically they have a grudge against a person and they open fire. And of course, they're indiscriminate as hell and they're lousy shots, which is, by the way, the best thing that could ever happen is that most of these people can't shoot for damn. Okay. But again, I don't know if I would consider that kind of event quite the same as what we're talking about. You know, so how do we solve the problem? Okay, well, first of all, let me summarize where we are with this. Number one, the motivation, in my opinion, is primarily getting even with society for that which they think society has deprived them of. All right. Why they do it is a lack of self control, a lack of impulse control that typically is showing up a lot in kids nowadays. You know, um, and I mentioned the trans thing where I don't feel like I'm a boy, I feel like I'm a girl. Well, I'm just going to change to girl. I'll worry about the ramifications of it later. So I'm going to shoot myself up with a bunch of synthetic chemicals. When I turn 50, that may turn out to be cancerous, but whatever. I only care about right now. Okay, so there is that. What's the solution? Um, I think that one thing we can do is, well, first of all, using these school shootings as fodder for our political arguments, that only exacerbates it, right? They see the commotion they're causing. They see the turmoil they're causing between these two factions, which make up 99% of the population going at it. And so they live for that, and trying hard not to over dramatize these events. Forget the candles, forget the prayers, which, by the way, bother me as much as, bothers liberals. Liberals say, I hate it when they say our prayers go out to the families. I don't like it either. And also getting rid of these over the top, over emotional responses. First of all, and this bugs me, I go onto Twitter and they've had a school shooting, and especially among liberals. Sorry, liberals, but I'm going to have to aim this one at you. I am really tired of people fabricating a bunch of bullshit about how this has traumatized them. I could barely get out of bed. I had tears streaming down my face all day. Give me a break. That didn't happen. You reacted to that news story in this way. This is how liberals really react to these school shootings. And by the way, you conservatives, I'm going to take aim at you next. So you're not getting off the hook either. But a liberal hears school shooting. Really? Was it an AR-15? Oh, was it AR-15? All right. Got to get on Twitter. This is the problem in our country. When I heard about the shooting, I couldn't get out of bed. I was so dismayed. All right, let me go ahead and hit the old enter button. There it goes. Now let's see what people say in response. Oh, there's my friend. What is she going to say? Oh yeah, AR-15. That's their reaction. And you're going to have a very hard time convincing me that is not how they react to this. Chris Murphy, the Democrat, out of Connecticut, he does what I call virtual shouting. He gets up there and he rants and he raves and he gets, pops his blood vessels out. But in the back of his mind, it's all right. School shooting. This will get rid of that AR-15 rifle. Yeah. Beto O'Rourke, same thing. Take away the cameras, and you're not going to get anything out of them. Oh, there was no cameras. There's no cameras around. Oh well. When you put the cameras on them, all of a sudden they go into these rages. Okay. Conservatives, hey, you're no better. I mean, really, you get on there and, all right, AR-15 rifle, time for me to get on there and defend the AR-15. I'll start off by saying my prayers go out to all of the family members. It's like, oh, come on. I wish both sides would quit doing this shit. By the way, I'll tell you a perfect example of this crap. Prince died. Prince died? Oh my God. Today, I heard that Prince died. And I'm devastated. I don't know what I'm going to do. I can't get out of bed. I'm shaking. You don't own a single album. But that's the phony baloney bullshit that we got to put up with now. And I am sick and tired of it. I mean, yeah, I don't mind it if you want to say, yeah, this is sad news. Okay, it's true. It is sad news. Yeah, this is terrible. What's happened? It's very tragic. Fine. But to tell me that you can't even function because you heard this news, give me a break. I mean, I ain't buying it. And they'll come back and say, well, you're just heartless. No, I am honest. I'm just honest. As humans, we can't get through we can't progress at all if we react to every negative story like this. I mean, ultimately, we have to go to work and we have to get our minds off things and we have to be productive. And I can guarantee you that 99% of the people who are posting this, heart-drenched crap are nowhere near that. The other 1% are probably nuts. So, well, if you knew one of the kids, hey, that's different. Okay. That's different. By the way, those of you who think, oh, Johnny Walker Dread, he's talking about kids today not being able to cope. And that's ultimately the problem. They can't cope. We have trained them not to be able to cope with ordinary life's problems. There was a school shooting in Arkansas some time back. The neighboring school district had to bring in their counselors to give grief counseling for the students when it was not even their school. I mean, we have a kid get killed in a car wreck, happens to high school students all the time. And we have to truck in the student counselors, the grief counselors. When I was a kid, I was, probably 17. I was probably a junior, something like that. A couple of our friends got killed on the freeway, turned the car over. And they had a big deal. They brought in the amphitheater. So they had all the entire student body crowd in there. And the vice principal got up there and cried. And the principal got up there and cried. What do you think we did? Anybody think, did we get heartbroken? Couldn't go to class. We're so, I need counseling. I need some grief counseling here because I'm so overwhelmed. No, we were talking about, well, how long should we wait before we ask his girlfriend out? I mean, seriously. And he was a good friend, but we were far, far more mentally tough than they are now. That's just the way, back when I was a kid, that's the way we acted. Now, his girlfriend was distraught. There were those, we weren't close friends. We knew him pretty well, and we got along. We weren't really close friends, and if it was a really close friend, we could understand that. But as just acquaintances or good friends, we weren't going to react, like devastated. No way. But now things have changed. You drive around. I was in California about last year, and you drive around and you see on the back of trucks, sorry, Hector, or no, not sorry, but Hector, gunned down and whatever. We love you, man. We miss you. And they actually purchase these things for the back of their trucks. We never would have done something like that. It's like, oh, Hector took it on the chin there. Well, that's the way the shit goes, right? But now it's like this overpouring of grief. That's, in my opinion, you call me mean and nasty all you want, but I will say this inability to handle life's problems and to deal with trauma is really crippling our kids. They cannot cope with anything. And we've trained them. It's not their fault. We've trained them to be this way. Kids having a kind of a rough time, we dial up the counseling. And obviously, if the kid's has real serious problems, you want to do something. I'm not saying don't get help for your kids, but at the same time, you can't dial up counseling at each sniffle. It's not good for them. They have to be able to plow through some of these things. It's life, and so your girlfriend's going to break up with you. You're going to get in a car wreck and destroy your car. Daddy not going to buy you another one. Tough. Your video game is no longer functioning or whatever. There's going to be problems. You're going to have to deal with them. And, if you're a parent, you have to remain supportive. At the same time, you have to be careful of feeding the monster. And I'm warning you, it's what is happening, I think, to our kids today. It's called coddling. We've been coddling them. And we're seeing now the ramifications of that. Unable to cope. And therefore, at some point, they reach a lashing out. They don't have the, let's say, impulse control to stop themselves, and they go shoot up a school. That's my theory. And I have a solution. There is no perfect solution. I mean, if you carry out what I do, you're not going to stop all school shootings. School shootings will stop when they cease being on the public conscious. And over time, they'll start to dwindle out. And they'll be replaced by something different. I'm guaranteeing you, yeah, that's a little strong. I would put my money that getting in a truck and running people over is going to be the next thing. Because it has that Grand Theft Auto thing about it. And you get to see the terror in the people's face even more than if you're shooting them, because they're running from you and you're chasing them down. So there's a sporting aspect to it. That's going to be the next thing. Now, try to stop that. What are you going to do? Stop kids from being able to drive? You could put up barricades, that prevent some of it, but there's always going to be congregations. You'll always be able to find a crowd. And I think that'll be the next thing. So let's see what we got here. Okay, I know they live by that. I'm not sure what you're referring to, but okay. Let's see, we may have been the previous one. We have seen a lot of coddling. It's ridiculous. Let me give an example of this. And this is a mild example, but it kind of shows you where we're going. When I went to college, long time ago, I packed up my stuff into the back of, I was driving a truck. I was driving a car at the time. And I put the stuff in the back of my car and I drove to college. I had a dorm room set up for me. And I went in there and grabbed my stuff and stuck it in the room. And orientation was nothing. We got the book that told us what classes we were going to be taking. We had a map of the school. And we got, of course, the catalog, which gave all the information. Today, things are much different. The orientations are far more involved and more expensive. And now your first year is often taken by taking courses designed to acclimate you to college life. Don't tell me it's not, because I taught one of those courses. So they would put you in a group of students, and you stayed with that group of students for the first year because the university wanted you to form friends. So the university is essentially putting people in groups so that they can become friends with each other and help each other study and all that kind of stuff. So you didn't have to go out and get your own friends now. The university did it for you. Now, I'm not necessarily opposed to that. Studies have shown that if you have a friend in college that you can study with, and you have a similar course, schedule, and that was another thing. They set up the course schedule so you'd be in the same classes with these friends of yours, okay, that you have a better tendency to graduate. Okay, so I don't have necessarily any problem with the science of it. My issue is that when you're not even required to get your own friends, there you go. That's coddling. The orientation, a lot of money has been poured into student services. This is at the college level. And it also is true at the K-12 level as well. So nowadays, if you kind of struggle academically, you can get a disability, which is not hard. You just got to get a doctor to say, sure. It's about as easy as getting a medical marijuana license here in Oklahoma. By the way, it pisses me off, but okay. So you could get a little disability thing. And now you get twice the time to take the exam as the other students. So those of you in college, take note. Now, as an instructor, that made things hard because now I'm not giving out a 2-hour final, I'm giving out a 4-hour final. Now, keep in mind, it's a pretty good job. I really can't complain too much. If I have to stay there for 4 hours, hey, there are minds who have it a lot worse than me, so I really can't complain too much. But it's still a little bit of a gripe. But yeah, they bend over backwards now to make things as comfortable as you can. If you want a dog in your classroom with you, well, yeah. I mean, that's a comfort dog, therapy dog. You don't want to deny to our kids. So now you can't even deny a dog in the classroom with him if he wants one, because these kids have so much trouble and they need a dog with them to make them feel better. You think I'm joking? But therapy dogs are common. And, you know, um, to be honest with you, I don't know if a kid having a therapy dog is really on the path to improving or on the path to just becoming more and more dependent on external support for their problems. At what point do we become men and women standing up, taking care of our own lives, taking control of our own lives? Or are we always going to have government or others providing support structures with us every step of the way? Well, let's see what we got kind of here going here. I don't want to. Yeah, young men acting without father figures, being urged to act like women as grow up, creating large numbers of disaffected male youths. Yeah, I mean, I think that a large part of it is just they're just confused at this point. Um, Usually, back in the day, if you didn't have a father figure, your mother tried to compensate by that to that. I mean, right? It's like she tried to overcompensate by making you more manly. Now I think that they have basically turned these young males into girls. You know, um, having a student walk in wearing a dress. I mean, look, I mean, if you want to wear a dress, that's fine. I mean, you could do whatever you like, but you are essentially looking for people to comment on it, and you can't complain if some of that commentary is going to be negative. Well, I guess you could complain, but it seems kind of interesting to me that you do that which you want to attract attention, but then get pissed off when the attention that you so desired isn't positive. Same with tattoos. I don't understand why everybody hates me. They look at me like I'm a freak. Well, I think you got the tattoos in the first place because that's the reaction you wanted. I firmly believe that you get the tattoos because you want to freak people out and you want them to go, oh my God, look at him. But then when they do it, you get pissed off. Be careful what you wish for. Yeah, video games are going to be blamed um, pretty much. I think, keep in mind, is it possible that video games could be playing a role here? It could. We haven't ruled it out. My problem with it is that I kind of wonder if this is just not the easy out for everybody. You know, It's the one thing that the liberal side and the conservative side can say it's video games, and they all can say okay, and they can walk away from this deal. Um, could video games be playing a role? I don't know, but be careful about ruling it out. You can't rule it out unless you look at the statistics, unless you look at the research. And unfortunately, and I know some of you are heading there to start posting your research now, but we typically look for research that reinforces our beliefs and we tend to ignore that which doesn't. This cherry picking thing, I'm not influenced by it. Don't post a whole bunch of references. Won't mean anything to me because I'm not going to go one way or the other on it until I explore the entire literature on the deal. If you've seen my other videos on my channel, I typically will dive pretty deep on something that interests me, and I don't want to have a couple of research thrown out as, oh, okay, I guess it's not video games because some dude, at Coolidge College made a study. I don't care. So yeah, be careful about cherry picking data. Yeah, they brought therapy dogs in for students having trouble. That was shameful. And I remember at the college where I was working at the time, where they had therapy circles. They had a little place in the courtyard where if you were having troubles with Trump being elected, you could gather. And what they did, I don't know. Didn't join them. I don't know what they do. I think they probably cried and screamed and stuff. I'm not against people doing stuff if it makes them feel better. But when you get together with your friends to do it, that seems to indicate to me that this is more than just venting to make yourself feel better. There's something more insidious going on. My gut feeling is that a lot of those students are probably not doing real well mentally now because whatever issues, hangups they had that drove them to do it, probably still there. There's no substitute for having both feet firmly planted on the ground, and they don't. They're on the verge of insanity. They're just kind of teetering close to that line. I don't know what they're searching for. I hope they find it someday. Yeah, there you go. That's how we used to do it. Alcohol. Yeah, and this is, never let a good crisis go to waste, and especially when you look forward to them. And I don't want anybody to tell me that both sides don't do this. I think the liberals are worse, but when really horrific news becomes good news because it feeds a political um, belief of yours. Believe it or not, I think people take their politics more seriously than anything else. And I've said this when Kyle Rittenhouse was um, being tried. And by the way, I should introduce myself a little bit better. I have probably, and I don't think there's a probably about it. I have more videos on the Kyle Rittenhouse shooting than anybody on the planet. And if somebody has done more work publishing on Kyle Rittenhouse than me, I like to see what they've got. But I have over 300 videos on him, and I think it's probably closing in on 400. And I go through um, the law, tons of videos on what the law says in Wisconsin, what happened that night, and a lot of trial analysis. So if the Kenosha shootings and Kyle Rittenhouse and his friend Dominic Black and all these others interest you, you need to go to my channel and watch a lot of my videos. I mean, I've got tons. But I've also spent a lot of time on these other cases like Theodore Edgecombe, I did a lot of stuff on him. When Crystal Kaiser comes up, and that's going to be a wild one. Get ready. It's going to get rough. When she comes up for murder charges in the summer, I'm going to be covering that very thoroughly. So if this kind of stuff interests you, go to my channel. I will say that most of the stuff that I have concerns race relations in relation to various shootings and cop um, suspect interactions, for lack of a better word. Okay. So yeah, the Johnny Walker Dread Show, go to my channel and check out some of my videos. And I don't even know where I was going with that. I lost track here. Never let a good crisis go to waste. I guess that's what was starting it. But I think that a large number of people, oh yeah, I remember now what I was going to say. The fact that Kyle Rittenhouse is being blamed primarily for these shootings. And you might think, well, come on, Johnny Walker Dread, you're exaggerating. No, I mean, for the most part, they're not blaming Kyle, but the support of Kyle. You see what happens when you support a killer? This is what happens. Never mind the fact that none of these shootings seem to have any relationship whatsoever to Kyle Rittenhouse or his supporters. These kids, and I've talked about why they're doing this, has nothing to do with support from Kyle Rittenhouse's supporters. Okay? They're not doing it for that reason. They don't care. So when it's never let a good crisis go to waste, when I said during the trial that the people are wanting that kid to be convicted because of their political beliefs. It had nothing to do with whether they really felt he was guilty or not. Oh, they felt he was guilty. But the reason why they wanted him convicted so badly was not because of what he did, but because of what they thought he stood for. Trump. Being dead serious. They thought this is the embodiment of who we hate. Trump, patriots, white supremacy. And so if they could get this symbol thrown in jail for the rest of his life, they would score a major political victory. They would feel good. Most importantly, they would make the opposition feel really bad. And that's what drove them. And is it sick? Oh, yeah, of course it is. When you want a 17-year-old kid to go to prison for the rest of his life because you want to put screws in on your political opponents, that's pretty bad. And yet they absolutely did. And I've said it before, and I'll say it again. If any of them had the evidence of what happened that would have exonerated him, they would have buried it. They wouldn't have taken it to the police. If they opened up this bag or box and they saw in there like, oh, I guess he was innocent after all, they would go out into their backyard and they would dig a hole about 6 feet deep and they'd put it in the bottom and they would cover it. Under no circumstances would they turn it in because it's about politics. That's why they so desperately want the guns used in these shootings to be an AR-15. And they so desperately want the shooter to be white and a supremacist, if they can somehow make that connection. And when it's not, they become very disappointed. But then again, the conservative side they kind of do similar things as well. It's not just one side. So that is one of the problems that we have to fight, is getting people, both sides, to quit trying to use every incident that comes around as some sort of pawn in a political battle. You know, um, getting rid of AR-15s is not going to stop the shootings. I'm telling you. If a kid wants to do damage, he'll do it. He'll drive and run over kids. He'll pull out a 9mm. He'll do it. There's going to be an outlet. So perhaps let's focus on understanding the problem, which is what I've spent a lot of time thinking about, and let's do something about it. But again, they're wanting solutions that make them feel good, and being told, hey man, don't be lighting candles. Don't be going out there and typing these these tear drenched tweets and stuff. That's not what they want to hear. So let me go ahead and read some more here. Yeah. I mean, veterans, they probably have actually been through things that are like traumatic, you know. So I don't have any problem with veterans using them at all. And I think that as you get older, I think that you can succumb to some of these issues more. Your brain isn't on fire like it used to be. So yeah, I get that. Yeah. Let's see here. Yeah, the giving out of drugs and stuff. Well, there was a time when, let me see here. Okay. Well, at any rate, there was a time when the word junkie was used all the time. What was a junkie? A junkie was a person typically who shot up heroin. But we used the term when I was a kid for pretty much anybody who did narcotics. Not so much cocaine. For some reason, cocaine users didn't get labeled as junkies. Don't know, but whatever. Then around, I think it was around 1990, I think it was the American Psychological Association started urging people to not use the term anymore. And I actually did a study on use of the term junkie. And around 1990, you start to see a lot lower usage of the term junkie in everyday language, primarily because it was considered kind of a slur almost. What do you think happened to heroin use around 1990? I'll let you think about that one. Well, it must have dropped because as these people feel better about themselves, they're more likely to go and get treatment. Skyrocketed. Just the opposite. Why? You remove the stigma. Now, people who are on heroin, well, they have a disease. And it's something that happened to them. It's a disorder. They even have a fancy name for it. Substance abuse disorder or something like that. So you can't call them names anymore. And by the way, it was effective. None of us, when I was a kid, wanted to be associated with those people at all. You had pretty much typical kids. You had stoners, which were the marijuana users. I'm not saying people who occasionally smoke marijuana, but ones who made marijuana their lifestyle. Okay. And then you had junkies. And those are the people who did the really rough stuff. And junkies were to be avoided at all costs. You never wanted to be in that crowd. But things have changed. And now you have friends who they have a substance abuse disorder. Well, that doesn't sound so bad. I can hang around somebody if he just has a substance abuse disorder. And I'm not saying that to ostracize. What I'm saying is when you remove the stigma, kids are more likely to try something. And the amount of heroin has gone way up. And by the way, that suicide line you saw mirrors it. They almost go together because people hooked on heroin often end up at the end of their rope. We think we're doing these kids a favor by removing the stigma. I'm not so sure. I have a feeling we're making things worse. Now, I want to be very clear about something. It's okay to see a general problem that you can attack and say, we need to stop this from happening anymore. That's different than targeting individuals. Okay, so it's like divorce. You can acknowledge that divorce is bad. Okay, high divorce rates are not good. Breaking up of the family, there are ramifications of that. And so you don't want a society that promotes divorce. Divorces are generally considered rather bad. But you don't target people for scorn just because they've gotten divorced. You see an overall general problem that you want to solve. That doesn't mean necessarily targeting the individuals in it. And so it goes with being, the whole term of junkie. You can create a stigma about the general population, recognizing that this is something we don't encourage. It's not a simple life choice. Shooting up heroin not only ruins it for you, you might end up in a life of crime. And every time you do this, somebody south of the border got their head chopped off for it. The narcotics trade hurts a lot of people. And if you're doing narcotics, you are at fault partly for what's happening. So in a general, we don't want to promote heroin use, and we want to discourage it, and we want to make it shameful and put a stigma associated with it. But when we find an individual who's been afflicted by it, I think at that point we have to concentrate on helping that person. And I think that you can have both, just like divorce. Okay? It's not fair to say, oh, you're divorced. Oh my God. Back in the 50s, that's what you did. Divorced. Oh, I don't want you going anywhere near him. He's divorced. Now, we don't have that. And that's good because whatever problems that you got yourself into when you got divorced, you found you had to solve that problem, and you did. Okay, I can't judge you. But I can judge the overall practices, saying that this is not a good thing for society. And the same goes with all of these problems that these kids are having. So when I say we're coddling kids, I'm not saying that if an individual kid has troubles, that we shouldn't think of ways of helping him. I'm saying as a general rule, as a general practice, this is not healthy. Hope that made sense to you. It sounds a little bit inconsistent, hypocritical, but I don't think it is. I think I've thought through this pretty well. All right, let's see what else we got here. In the UK, they have lots of knife attacks because no guns. Well, got to be careful with that. A lot of people say, well, yeah, but knife attacks are better than gun attacks, right? Which is true. The issue here is we have 300 million guns in this country. You're not going to make them go away. And I often have people say, you know how dangerous it is with all these guns around? I'll say, yeah, that sounds really dangerous. I better get a gun to protect myself. Oh, you don't need a gun. Don't be exaggerating all of the turmoil around you. Well, wait a minute. Which one is it? I mean, is our society that dangerous because the guns around or not? Can't have it both ways. My feeling about it is that whatever the reason, this country is dangerous. It's got a lot of crime. I'm going to be going into areas sometimes where it's, you have to have some way of protecting yourself. Therefore, I want a gun. I don't want no knife. I don't want no rape whistle. Well, it wouldn't do me any good. No. Okay, I don't want to go there. I don't want no whistle. I don't want a cell phone to call 911. The purpose of the police is to come and find the person who killed me. It's not to stop the person from killing me. Police don't do that. That's not why they're hired. They're hired to go after criminals, which means these are people who have already committed crimes, right? So the whole idea somehow that police are hired to protect you, they're not. Saw that with the Kyle Rittenhouse trial. Kyle was defending property. He should have had the police doing that. Police don't protect property. That's not the proper function of a police department. If you set property on fire, the police will go after the culprit and arrest him, sure. But they're not there to stop people from burning stuff. And as it went in Kenosha, Kyle went out there with a rifle, protect property, because that's not the policeman's job. And the police weren't doing it. So, and I know some of you may be thinking, well, no, I think the police do protect. No, you tell you what, you go on a vacation, you call the police sometime and tell them, hey, I'm going on vacation. Can you guys come around and watch my property? And they'll tell you to go fuck off. They'll say, call a private security company. They'll do it for you. Yeah, if you can afford it. But the police aren't going to do it. So gun control, I am responsible for my own protection because nobody else is going to do it. And by the way, I'm in Oklahoma, all right? Our police here are brutal. And they are probably as effective at stopping crime as anywhere in the country. But even here, they're not going to stop me from getting hurt. I have to do that. So yeah, if you guys think your police force is rough, you need to come around here sometime. Let's see what we have here. Some studies suggest there are more guns in England and Australia than there was before the bans. I have no idea. I'll have to punt on that one. I just don't know. But regular citizens have none of them. I'm not sure what you're referring to when you mean by them. Maybe it's in the previous. Oh, okay. You're talking about Australia and England, that regular citizens don't have them. I don't know. I mean, I quit worrying about what kind of guns they have in the UK or whatever. By the way, I'm going to say this, man. All you British and all you Australians, I don't give a damn what you think of our gun laws. Stay the hell out of it. It's not your problem. Okay, the last time I looked, I don't recall going on to any of your websites and sitting there and worrying about what kind of gun laws or knife laws or whatever you're passing in some township. That's not my business to get involved in that. So why do you feel that you can come in and tell us how we should be handling this? You're not the United States. We have our own laws. We have our own history. We have a very pioneer history, and guns are a part of our culture. And that's something that you don't have. So I don't want to hear it. Is there anything, and this was posted on Twitter, maybe that person's even here tonight, but is there anything more obnoxious than some Brit talking about gun control in the United States? You know, as far as constitutional carry goes, there are 25 states that have constitutional carry, which means that if you got a gun, you can slap it in your purse or handbag or whatever, backpack, and carry it around. You don't have to have a permit. Okay. Every time a state tries to pass one of these, here come the gun gun control freaks. You're going to go into the Wild West now. There's going to be shootouts in the streets every night. Doesn't happen. I'm not saying that constitutional carry lowers crime. I'm not going to say it raises it. In fact, what I have done in my studies, and I've looked into this, it doesn't seem to have any real noticeable effect on crime. So why not allow it? You know, when I'm walking around, I don't care about the average. I only care about me. I care about whether I can defend myself. I don't care about, on average, the average person will end up shooting, whatever. I've heard that crap. It's wrong. But I don't care. I only care about my own particular situation. In constitutional carry in Oklahoma's one of those states. I love it. I mean, I like having my gun. Have I ever pulled it out? I almost once did. Not all of it. I was in a Starbucks and a guy came in there and he was knocking shit over and looked like he was homeless, and I thought he was going to pull a knife. So I kind of just put my hand on the gun and had it ready. And then they shushed him out of there and took my hand off of it. You know, and while I had my hands on the gun, I'm thinking, under what circumstances do I pull it? Under what circumstances do I open fire? Because you have to go through those things in your mind if you have the opportunity, because you don't want to make a mistake. I'm not going to go and shoot somebody who doesn't need to be shot. You know, so yeah, you have to use your head. All right. A native Californian. Oh, sorry to hear that. Whereabouts in California? I know the state pretty well. And okay, so John Jackson, where are you from? By the way, if you're a Brit and you're pro gun, that's not obnoxious at all. I welcome your comments. That's hypocritical. Yeah, I know. I don't care. Oh, San Diego. Yeah, yeah. That's turning into a real shithole now. I one time I lived in Stockton. Oh wow. And if you want to see what democratic leadership can do, that was a rough town. But yeah. So on the gun front, it's hard to avoid the discussion about them, but I really don't think that the answer is there. You know, I think that you're fighting way too much. 300 million guns, you're not going to get rid of them. And I'm not going to give up mine until you can guarantee that none of the bad guys have any. Well, you're never going to be able to do that. So I'm keeping mine. Let's see here. Behind the orange curtain. Oh, yeah. Okay. I know what you're saying. Oh, Scottish. I'm Scottish too. Jackson's not a Scottish name. What the hell are you talking about? That's English. When you say it's gone downhill, what do you mean? The crime has risen? You got a lot of knife fights now going on. Is it like West Side Story? The guys out there and they're switching hands with the switchblades. Oh man. Lowland. Oh God, I could throw you out of here. Yeah, I didn't know there was such a thing as lowland, Scott. Yeah, of course there is. I'm actually from the Highlands. My family was brought in to shut, and you could tell by the name Johnny Walker, by the way. I'm Scottish. But my family was brought in, clan was brought in to stop William the Conqueror, and you could tell how good they were. Shit. Yeah, the Johnny Walker clan they didn't work out too well. But I will say this, man, the Scots are fighting sons of bitches. All right, let's see here. What else we got? Oh yeah. Well, Scotland's always had troubles with narcotics. Okay. Um. So, what do you think? Can we pull this off? Can this country rally around these ideals and pull this off? What would stop it? And again, let's go back just summary. Um, Entitlement caused by coddling and pampering, which it also impulse control, which allows them to carry it out. Their motive is to inflict pain on society to demonstrate to society how they feel. Yes, this does not apply to every shooting. There are some that don't fit this pattern. And my solution is to tamper down a little bit the overwrought, hysterical, I know that's a sexist term, but I don't care, hysterical reactions and try to get let's say, the society focusing less on these things so that these school shootings are no longer on these kids' consciousness. I don't know. I will say this. I don't see any better solutions out there. All the other solutions I see are all designed to score political points. Every one of them. Mine are not. I mean, this is not pro-conservative. It's not pro-liberal. Oh, I guess you could say, well, since he's removing the focus off of guns, it's pro-conservative. Okay. Yeah. I'm a gun lover, for lack of a better word. So, yeah, I mean, I could see how I would be ripe for a response along those lines. Oh, okay. Yeah, well, you may be having to move out of California at some point. Place is going to hell. Now, keep in mind, you probably live in the nicest city in California. And San Diego is still one of the nicest cities in the country. Primarily because of weather and all that, and wealth. I mean, you've got it in San Diego. Give it about another 5-10 years, and then we'll check back and see how you're liking it. Yeah, Although Oklahoma, where I live, is much more business friendly than California. You notice something? You don't see too many people looting stores in Tulsa. You just don't. You have a lot more leeway to protect that which you own here in this state than in California. Now, I've lived in both. Okay. It's night and day. You don't want to be a landlord in California. It's not a landlord friendly state. It's great if you're a tenant, but I mean, you literally cannot pay rent and live rent free for a year by the time they're able to kick you out. In this state, you don't pay your rent, you're gone. They'll throw you out. All right, well, guys, I tell you what, we've been talking a long time. I hopefully you'll think about some of these ideas. I hope I kind of threw some stuff out there to make you think a little. It's good to have some ammo too when you get into these conversations or arguments, and you could be able to talk intelligently about some of these things. I'm going to probably head in now, get some sleep. It's getting a little bit late. I'm a little tired. We've been at it for quite a while, and frankly, I think I've said all I really want to say. I've kind of run out of stuff to say. So, any final comments? Post them in there if you like the show. Post them in there, and go and subscribe to my channel. I only have about 725 subscribers, and I have like 500 videos. That's not very good. And I'm not looking to make this into a business because I'd be starving if I did. I have a full-time job, and I'm an engineer, but so I make good money, so I don't need to support myself through YouTube. But still, it would be kind of nice to have a few more subscribers. So go on there and subscribe to my channel, and have fun with it. And I'll see you later. Oh, you're a landlord in California? Oh, geez, dude. What the hell are you doing? What's wrong with you? Slap, 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 slap. That's crazy. What I'm going to do, I'm going to go to California and I'm going to rent from you. And I'll pay the first month and then I'll live free for the rest of the year. While you go through the court system and have to get the sheriff. The sheriff ain't going to do shit. And yeah, I could ride that out for a long time. At any rate, I will see y'all later. Take care, guys. And thanks for joining in. I appreciate it. And until next time. Okay, I got to read this one because this is a pretty devoted follower, commenter. Hey, you can't fix that. There's just going to be ignoramuses everywhere you go. And do you spend your time correcting them? I don't know if it helps. Anyway, take care.